So let me introduce John. He graduated with a BS in mechanical engineering from Texas A&M University. I got that out of the way. And with his THM in cross-cultural ministry from here at Dallas Theological Seminary. John has been with the Pioneers Missions Agency since 2006. Following his graduation from DTS in 2007, he has served in South Asia, working with an unreached people group. He has experience with Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims, cross-culturally ministering in the U.S. and overseas, both short and long term. John and his wife, Rebecca, have recently returned to the area due to visa issues preventing a return to their country of service, which is becoming more and more of an issue. I'm painfully aware of that as well. But they continue serving among South Asians and other immigrants through the Apartment Life Ministry in Irving. They have 2 daughters. Sadie is 3, and then Lucy, and this is important. I don't know when this stops being important, but Lucy is 1.5. So please join me in welcoming John to chapel today. I failed to say that John is our missionary in residence, so let me squeak that in, and John, take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Chaplain, for that introduction, and it has been an honor to be the missionary in residence this past year. Can't believe it's already finishing up here this summer, but it's an honor and privilege also to come before you today, and it's great to see so many summer school students. I remember taking summer classes and taking Greek 1 and 2 intense summer, and I actually think that was the best way to do it, but I don't know how much you're going to be with me right now if you're doing that, but I hope to keep you entertained and keep your mind off of Greek or whatever classes you're taking right now. I just had to share one story from, I just want to say, I just really appreciate that education I got here at DTS before serving overseas. It is continuing to really serve me well, but your education doesn't finish here at DTS. It continues, and it's still continuing with me today as I learn to serve among Hindus, especially, and those from South Asia. And I always thought if I ever got to share in chapel, I just had to share how that is true, because within my first week, I don't know what you imagine when you think about serving with Hindus, but you probably don't think about sitting with former royalty eating chicken wings. I just thought, I'm just sitting here eating chicken wings with former royalty my first week in India. There it is. I said it. I knew I was going to. But anyway, and it was just so wow. I just never imagined this and the other things going on. And your education continues. And I want to share today a few of the lessons that I've learned, living among Hindus with you today. And I know some of you are from the South Asian context and have lived among Hindus as well. So I hope you will bear with my lessons and maybe even pick up a few things yourself. So I want to share that with you today. And now, why do you need to know about Hindus? Okay, why do you need to know? Well, first of all, we all know that Jesus has given us the great commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves. Okay, and He's given us the great commission to make disciples of all nations. And if you've studied that passage, you know that nations is not political nations like India or Sri Lanka, but ethnic groups, ethnos. And these ethnic groups, when you think about it, nations in that sense, South Asia has thousands and thousands of nations. And these nations many of these nations are Hindu peoples. And so we've been given that commandment to love them and to make disciples of them. And you may not think it's something that you're going to be responsible for, but I hope you'll realize today that the Lord is putting these peoples in as your neighbors. They are going to be your neighbors. Wherever you serve in this world, you're going to find Hindu peoples. And they're going to be in your neighborhoods. And the Lord has commanded us to love them and to make disciples of them. So my real goal today, if you fall asleep after this, just remember, my goal is that I hope that you will love your Hindu neighbors better. I hope you will seek to learn about them and get to know them better and love them better. So, and I I was poorly prepared to love my Hindu neighbors, and I've learned so many lessons the hard way and I've offended in so many ways my Hindu neighbors. Even before I was at DTS, some of the first Hindus I met really had a heart to share the Lord with them, but still made mistakes, and I still offended, even in sharing truth, how I shared it in ways that really were unnecessarily offensive to them. I can't even get into all the details of why that was, because I didn't even realize until after I'd learned so much. Later, looking back, I cringe at how I first approached them. So I just want you to realize that it's very easy to make mistakes, but that we still need to love them and learn how to love them better. Okay, so the passage we're going to look at today is Acts 17, 24 to 27. So let's turn there now. So the background of this passage is Paul is in Athens, and he is touring the city and seeing all the idolatry and being just disturbed by seeing all this idolatry as he's going around the city. And he begins to preach the gospel there, and it gets the attention of these philosopher types. And I love this passage because it really, the context is so much like what we see in South Asia with idolatry, and it is disturbing when you're not used to that, and you start to see that and get exposed to that. And so here in I'm going to actually start a little earlier in verse 22. So Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, "Men of Athens, I observe that you're very religious in all respects. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you, that God who made the world and all things in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all people life and breath and all things, and made from one man every nation of mankind," there's that word nation, ethnos, "to live on all the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation, that they would seek God, if perhaps they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us." And I'm going to keep going a little further here. "For in him we live and move and exist, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are also his children. Being then the children of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and thought of man. Therefore, having overlooked the times of ignorance, God is now declaring to men that all people everywhere should repent, because he has fixed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness through a man whom he has appointed, having furnished proof to all men by raising him from the dead." So that passage has always come to mind as I have traveled in South Asia and have seen the temples, have lived with a Hindu family, and seen the idols throughout the house, the room I stayed in. I think I counted over 100 images or idols in the room that I stayed with them. It was pretty amazing. It just fills their life. And so really my first point is that Hindus need to know their Creator. If you look back, verse 24, he's explaining to them the God who made the world and all things in it. And he goes on to say he's not like these things that we've observed. And the context in South Asia today is not so unlike the Greek context, where you have idolatry, but you may also not realize that Hindus aren't always idolaters. They don't always believe in idols. They also, some Hindus may not worship idols at all. They may be more like the Greek philosophers and be into worldly wisdom, like these guys were at there in Athens. And really, my first point I want you to know is that they need to know their Creator, and to love Hindus better, we need to really get to know our Hindu friends and what do they believe. Because something I didn't realize, and what you may not get in a comparative religions textbook, is that Hinduism is really not an organized religion. It's not. There's no one authoritative text that's agreed upon. There's no one author or founder. There's no one In fact, there are many religions that are classified under Hinduism. And many think that the idea of even Hinduism was invented by foreigners to try to classify South Asian religions together and compare with Christianity and Islam. But I want you to understand that, it's really more of a civilization, more of a culture, an umbrella in which there's many religions, many beliefs. Even I know Hindus who are atheists, if you can think of that. So don't think of it as a comparative religion like that. And so when you're getting to know your Hindu friend, you're getting to know them, and how can we help them as they grope around, as verse 27 says, they're groping around, searching for God in all these different forms of idolatry and false worship. We need to get to know our Hindu friend, and what do they believe, and if they believe anything. And that's how we can lovingly, take their hand and help them find the true Creator God that loves them and has died for them. Now, my second point I want to say is that the Lord has brought Hindus into your neighborhood, okay, all over the world. I love how Paul has explained to them how, God has arranged the peoples of the world, and He's put them in set times and places for them to be. And right now, there's the idea of the Hindu Diaspora. They are, I'm sure you know this, that if you've opened your eyes, you will find Indian peoples, South Asian peoples, everywhere you work and live, okay? And Dallas here is one of those concentrations. And we are living in Irving, and we're serving with Apartment Life, and our community has a high percentage population of South Asians, and they're all over our neighborhoods. From when I moved to Dallas in '99 till today, it's just amazing how much more it has grown, that community. There are Indian restaurants, and I'm sure you've met Indians. And if you go over to MacArthur Boulevard, go up and down MacArthur Boulevard, it's like a little India now. And so God is, no matter what your ministry vision is, where you intend to serve, the Lord is going to be putting Hindus in your path. There are tens of thousands here. I know that most statistics are the same as when I was a student. Most students will minister in the Dallas area. And beyond that, it's going to be in Texas. And so few actually leave the borders of this state. But God has arranged for those Hindus to be here too. There are hundreds of thousands of them in our cities in Texas, and then all over the major cities of the U.S. and throughout the world. And so wherever you think you're going to serve, most likely you're going to be coming across Hindus in your community that you need to be prepared to reach, okay? So I'm running out of time. So I've made my 2 points in the short summer chapel. So let me just give you some practical ways that you can apply these concepts of how we can love our Hindu neighbor better. So I already mentioned getting to know them, and a great way to break the ice and do that is just to ask them, where are you from, and what is your language you speak in your home? Okay, that just communicates so much love when you show interest in them and what language they speak and where they're from. That we found that's a great way just to start the ball rolling. One story from my time in India is I would arrange tours for foreigners, and we'd always have a local driver take us, and I'd always ask them, in Hindi I had learned, where are you from, what's your mother tongue, and then if it's the local language that we were seeking to reach, I'd start to say a few phrases in that language. Well, the driver gets so excited that he insists that we stop at his village, stop and have chai, and just show off this foreigner who cared enough to learn a few phrases of his language. And it just opens the door to relationship. So yeah, just ask them, learn about them, find out what they believe. I'd also say prepare yourself for cross-cultural ministry. I'd be remiss if I did not encourage you to take classes in the World Missions Department. Take a class on cross-cultural ministry, cross-cultural communication. It will greatly enhance your ability to minister to the neighbors that the Lord is bringing you. Okay, and I had a local teacher tell me that she had teaches at a Christian school and led a little girl to Christ there and told her parents, and well, it turns out they're Hindu. And they were not quite so happy that she had, it's like, what does that mean? And so you might teach at a local Christian school, but you could still have Hindus there. So you got to be prepared for that. And so take a class or 2 or 3 here. Did you get okay, Rick? Okay. And then learn about contextualized ministry. I'm running out of time here, but last 2 points is learn how to reach out to them in ways they're going to understand. There have been a lot of mistakes made in the past, and so I encourage you to find out how can we learn more about where they're coming from and avoid that tendency to try to incorporate them into our westernized, Christian experience. How will it express itself in their own culture? And then also it takes time. One of my good Hindu friends, it took a year in a process for him to go from worshiping idols to including Jesus as one of the gods to the Spirit leading him to exclusive worship of Jesus and now leading others to the Lord as well. So just take your time and don't give up if it doesn't happen right away. So today I hope that I open your eyes a little bit to the Hindu world, the diversity, the need to love our neighbors and our Hindu neighbors, and open ourselves up to learning more how to do that better and preparing ourselves no matter where you go in the world and what kind of ministry you're going to be in. They're going to be your neighbor, and the Lord has asked us to reach them. So thank you.